Yo, what's goody, family? Welcome to the Devil's Advocate with Anderson and Akron Watson, where we're making the best case for the guiltiest pleasure. Get the fuck out of here.
That's what she said. Wow. She wanted to be abstinent.
Damn.
Yeah, and we all ready to go.
I think that's a
Man,
sign,
ask
nigga.
anybody. There are no benefits to abstinence.
Yo, what's going on, family? It's your boy Ace Anderson, and we are back for another episode of The Devil's Advocate. It is episode 16, man, and I'm so excited because today is just, we're doing things a little bit differently. Akron is right now on a plane, and he's traveling from place to place. You know, as artists, we're always moving around. So right now I got my boy 88 Killer on board. Welcome. How you doing, man? How you doing, boss?
Good. Staying black and prospering.
Word. So you put me on to this this documentary about called Exterminate All the Brutes, and this is serious, man. This shit is this one right here is wow.
Yeah, man. I knew you would like it.
Yeah, man. I'm curious to know just like how you heard about it, and what your initial thoughts were when you started watching it, and then we can kind of go from there.
Let's see. I heard about it. I've been seeing it on the on-demand menu, and then I was listening to this podcast, and he was going on about the documentary itself and how it broke down like ancestry and all that. And I usually try to stay away from black trauma topics and documentaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna see what this one's about, because he was saying he really hyped it up in the podcast basically, and then I started watching it, and what really kind of drew me in was about like the Haitian Revolution and how I didn't know anything about that. Only thing I knew about Haiti really was like Wyclef Jean, and you know they beef with the Dominicans, and that's about it. So like I didn't really know anything about them. And as I was watching,
are you Caribbean at all?
No.
Oh,
I
really?
am a Black American. I really don't even identify as African American because I'm not African. So I've adopted considering myself a Black American. Like I haven't done the whole trace your ancestry back to the motherland. I don't believe in swabbing my mouth and sending it to a weird lab. But so from all I know is we from here.
How far back does that go? Who knows?
Ain't no telling. Probably back to the boat. But again, go ahead.
That's so interesting because when it comes to ancestry, heritage, culture, a lot of Black people tend to just kind of stick together just because I feel like we've been sort of forcibly pushed together as one group just based off of the color of our skin, by people that don't look like us. They're just like, you guys are all one type. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about how you don't really even know your ancestry. So us being related or brothers in any sort of way is kind of like, just because we're Black, like that's really all we have in common. So watching that, especially as someone who is not, I guess, not connected to your heritage in any sort of deep way, how do you think that it affected you versus somebody that that might be a little bit more connected to
I mean, all of it's interesting, and you know, any insight into how you got here is always like super intriguing and interesting, you know. And there's so much fabricated information that comes out because he who wins the war tells the story. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So uh, you have to kind of filter and try to figure out what's legit, what's fabricated, what's real, and all that. And then at the same time, like I have to protect my mental sanity, bro. So I really can't like be deep diving into this every day because then I'll be out here like we need reparations, like collecting scalps every day. But I mean, it's definitely one of those things like us in 2021, we're relatively removed from slavery in the physical sense, but you know, you could still see the ramifications that it had even today with something as simple as getting an apartment, getting a credit card, in my case, being in an interracial relationship and stuff like that. Like, and so the more you know kind of about where the roots and the foundation is, you kind of can understand where we're at present day. Is kind of like what I took from it.
Word. So this filmmaker, for those of you guys watching now, the filmmaker is from Haiti, Raoul Peck, and he's made several different films. He's been making films for a long time. I didn't realize that it was the same guy. I don't really follow director stories all like that too much. Like, you know, to see who's directing movies. Like, people will name movies like, oh, you know, this is a Christian Nolan movie or whatever. You know, and I'm like, I have no idea who that is or what. You know, I can't connect it. But it was interesting because the filmmaker kind of documents a lot of his films and the impact of his films throughout the documentary, which was really interesting and intriguing to see that the narrative has been continuing. Like kind of he's been trying to tell this story since the jump. And it took actually a white friend to convince him to actually like go full force with it and tell the full story. um and that was interesting to me as well, because it made me think like, is there not a is there not an internal sense as black people to tell our history in the right way? Like, does it truly take an outside force to come in and say, hey, you should tell this story a different way? Or is there something within us that can rise up and say, hey, like, we want to tell our own story? And then on top of that, like, the multi-layered level of it is like, what is our story? Because, you know, I have a Jamaican background. My family is from Jamaica, and I don't really even know how far it goes back. I haven't done my 23andMe or, you know, my my ancestry or anything like that. So I just know from my family. But you know, you, Donovan, you say you're from America, right? You're American black, and and so we don't have the same story if we were to tell our stories. um and how far back does that go? So uh I'm really interested in how did you feel, did you feel connected to the story?
Yeah. I mean, whether you're Jamaican or Caribbean, Haitian, or whatever, once you get to America, you're black, bro. And so with that, we all share relatively the same general experience. If we get pulled over, they're not gonna be like, "Oh man, you're Haitian. We'll go easier on you," like, or or anything. So we all share that difference. I mean, or that similarity. For the most part, our differences get down to more like culturally and food and music and, traditions in that difference. So you can definitely relate to the perspective when you're talking about them coming to America and being here in America.
Mhm.
Now, there's subcultures and all that stuff within the Black spectrum. Like you have Blacks beefing with Africans, and then in the Africans you have the Nigerians versus so and so and all that. But in the grand scheme of things, they be looking at us like, hey, all them fools is black. So at that's where I feel like I can relate. When you were saying earlier, like, does it take like an outside entity to push? I would say yes and no, because a lot of it too is we tell our stories. We've been telling them. I mean, it's just a more so. I mean, we've been telling them since they was putting us on the boat through music, pictures, stories, hieroglyphics, basic, even hieroglyphics and all that. So it's just in this modern media form. It's more so the backing and the support on the back end that we have a lot of trouble with.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not, because I mean, this was a 4-part series it got ugly at times, and it's not a pretty series. It's not a feel good ending towards, per se. Like, it's not something that you're going to watch eating popcorn with a family per se, like on a movie night, unless y'all was just on one. So when you have some material like this, especially when we as a culture are working on it, but don't have a huge stake in what gets put out in terms of media wise, like you're making a documentary basically saying the people that are going to help push this out are the reason you're oppressed. They're you really don't know how to navigate that world unless you have an inside man, like his homie or something, so
yeah,
luckily today you could put it on YouTube or something, but then you could run the risk of falling into the flat earthers and all that type of stuff. So it's challenging. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was after I watched the first episode, I had to talk to my uncle who is like super pro black, like just like, yo, you need to he's always telling me, we need to know our history, we need to know our history. So I was so excited to share with him and have him watch it just to see what his thoughts were.
He was the one
And
that came down here that one time.
yeah. And what's funny, to my surprise, he was not happy with the documentary at all. And like, and it made me. He said he wasn't impressed. He felt like there should have been more things talked about and different stuff, and he had so many critiques. And I was really, really honestly shocked by his response to it. But also, I was like, it there seems to be a group of for lack of a better term, let's call them pro-black people that are just unhappy with anything that comes out from anybody. He's like, HBO, the white supremacists promoted it. They spun the story to be what they wanted it to be, and I'm like, wow, that's so interesting to see his mentality. So,
I mean, it's like, to put it in a lighthearted sense, it's you have your hoteps, is what we call those people who are like super pro-black. They use black soap, black toothpaste. Like they only sleep in black sheets. So like they know, they've spiraled into information well beyond the more casual person that this was kind of geared towards. And it's like it's like when you go to the movies to watch the latest Marvel movie. If you keep up with the movies, like, you're entertained. But if you're somebody who read the comic books and the sub stories and watch the cartoons and read fan fiction, you're like, oh man, they left this, that, and the third out. That's not even the real Spider-Man. And you're just like, bro, it was just a good movie, bro. So, I mean, I didn't really see where someone could have a beef with the movie. But then again, I mean, everybody, that's what film is for, I guess, for everybody's open critique. But it's just one of those, like, when like, you could talk to somebody about the Black Panthers and I'm sure they had a beef with how Judas and the Black Messiah was portrayed. There was so much stuff left out. And again, this is kind of what the documentary was touching on, was there's so much left out that we don't know.
Right. It's not going to happen from one docuseries.
I mean, bro, we have 400 years of information that they just didn't feel like writing down. They didn't feel like it was worth their time. They've damn near exterminated the Native Americans.
Yeah.
And paid them back by renaming their helicopters after them. So like, there's so much information. Like, I'd love to talk to a Native American who watched this video or this series, because we really don't know any. Yeah. And it's by design. Like, it's not like they're here, but not at the scope that they were. And so, like, to me, that was super eye-opening about, and you learn this stuff very lightly in history classes and stuff like that. But you're like, after watching that, I took away on some, like, if I was Native American, like, y'all put me on a reservation if you want to, man. Like, it's crazy out here.
Yeah. So my question is, what is the answer to the Hoteps, the Hotep community that is really just unhappy with anything? Like, how do we bring them to the fight where it's not, where we feel like they're on the same team as us? Because what I find is that a lot of the, as you call them, Hoteps, I haven't heard that term, but as like, I see they are firing behind enemy lines, and or what do you call it? It's a lot of friendly fire going on, and it just seems like, and honestly, I felt like this a lot a year ago, after the murder of George Floyd, and it felt like for a month everybody was saying the thing you can do for your country and the thing you can do for everybody is stay inside, don't go anywhere, stay home, you got to be at the house, like this COVID thing is serious, and Black people are dying disproportionately due to this COVID thing. And then George Floyd dies, and it's like, you need to be outside marching, and if you're not outside marching, then you don't care about Black people, and you don't care about us. And like, I felt fire from friends telling me that, I'm not doing enough, like, because I wrote a poem, I Am a Man, and put that out, and people like, you're not doing enough, that's not enough, you just wrote a poem. And it's like, I don't really have an answer to you, because I want to hear you out, I want to hear what you have to say, and say like, okay, maybe that has some weight to it, but at the same time, like, hey, I feel like I am doing enough. And I loved what you posted around that time. You said being Black is a protest, just my life is a protest. Just like, that is a protest, bro. Like, the fact that I'm still here, and then watching a movie or a docuseries like Exterminate All the Brutes, it's like, that's exactly right. We're the fact that we're here is a miracle. The fact that the documentary was even able to be made is a miracle. And the fact that we can talk about it on this channel after watching the history that our ancestors had to go through, the shit that they had to go through, it's like, how can we be so just so ungrateful for what we have right now, and be able to at least say, okay, here we are, I'm glad we don't live back there, and we're not gonna fight with each other because that's just gonna bring more divide to everybody.
I mean, they was fighting back then, bro. So I mean, Malcolm X and his followers at one point was beefing with Martin Luther King and his followers, and
Mhm.
you know, if you talk to your uncle, my mama, like there was black folks who was like, "Hey, we just trying to get by, bro. We not trying to do no sit-ins. We not trying to ride the bus. Like, we chilling, bro." And then there was some who was like, "I'm not down with the white man spitting on me and me just keep walking. Like, I'm going to punch that fool back." There's always going to be a pushback, back and forth, especially with us because we want more. Both sides ultimately want more. This country wrote a document that said liberty and justice for all. The day the ink dried on that piece of paper, it screwed them because even though they meant them, they wrote the word all. And ever since then, like, we coming for it. You know, we didn't really ask to be brought here. They didn't send us back. So, you know, we want more. And especially at the age I'm at now, I'm not going to go back and forth with any black people about what I need to be doing to further the movement, because every day I wake up is a furthering the movement. Every day I'm in my child's life, every day I interact with people is me furthering the movement. As long as I'm out here, not out here rob, killing, raping, and stealing, like, we good. Like, you know, what else is there to do? I mean, there's so much to do, but like, I'm not about to be using the time that I'm here on Earth to be arguing with black people about what to do.
Right. So what's your answer to them? Like if and when they come and say anything to you, or like you're not doing enough or whatever, like,
Hey, you got it, bro. Like, you know, like, life is too short, man, to have this pissing contest, bro. Like, it's way too short for that. It's, you know, you feel I ain't doing enough. I'm not going to keep a notepad of things I'm doing to help you feel better about it, because you're never going to be satisfied, you know? So, like, you be mad, and I'm going to continue doing whatever I'm going to be doing, and we'll see each other at the finish line, bro. But, like, you know, you two fools, what's the saying? You both look like fools arguing from a distance. I've like paraphrased that. So, like, no one can tell who's right or wrong on the outside looking in. If I'm sitting here arguing with you about the black plight, and, you know, people down the way are like, "Well, what's going on? We're not doing anything productive." Like, are we going to build this house, fam, or are we going to argue about what hammer to use?
right.
Like, you know, like, you know, there's so much more important things to do. I was always a fan of strategy and solution. Like, we can complain so much. We know the complaints. We know the grievances. We know all that. What are we doing? Like, tell me what petition to sign. Tell me where we meeting up. Tell me who to vote, when to vote. Tell me where to put my money to, where the money going. Like, give me those solutions and answers and strategies. I'm all for it. But if you're going to sit here and say, "Oh, well, Ace can't do that because he's not married to a dark-skinned black woman, so that gets him out of here. Donovan or 88 Killer can't do that because he made a baby with a white one." Like, if we're going to get into that, like, y'all got it, bro. Like, like,
right.
like, y'all got it.
What was your biggest takeaway from the film?
Man, just more so like, he who wins gets to tell the story. You know, like, it's one of those where it's like, man, I wish we could go back in time with the knowledge that we have today to go back and help them. Because you'd be like, man, these fools was so pussy. But like, you know, our ancestors weren't necessarily equipped or knew any better, you know? I mean, they got into gunpowder and the fighting from a distance and how it made them seem and look and feel
Right.
invincible. And you're just like, man, if y'all just knew how bitch made these fools was, man, like,
Yeah, man.
or like, you know how they had the little scene where the lady was bathing the white man after a hard day of him hanging her son and them. And I'm just like, if they knew they could just mob that fool,
Right.
and when they send more of them over on the boat, like some of the Indians had it right. Like soon as y'all touched down, it was a wrap. But like, at the same time, a lot of them was like, hey, bro, we all here. Land is plentiful. Fish is good. Like, y'all can come kick it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I wanted to go back in time and be like, no. Like, like that's kind of one of the things where it's just like, man, they just got over on us early.
Word. So now this is a taboo talk show. So we gotta look at it from the other perspective. So looking at it as a colonizer,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that there was any other, like, how could it have been different as a colonizer? What could have been done differently?
Stay where you was at.
Mm.
Because to this day, they have no interest in mingling
Mm.
as
Mm-hmm.
a whole. I wouldn't say not even as a whole, but there's still efforts for division to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And they still take a lot. They love our music, clothing, swag, bodies, all that, and that's all cool. And then we're gonna go back to where we were at.
Mm.
And I always tell the analogy to like uh, some of my other coworkers and stuff is like, when I was growing up, me and my homies never said, hey, bro, it's Friday night. Let's hop in the whip and the first white dude we see, just beat him up. Like, it's never happened.
Right.
We've never rolled around to Highland Park and was like, bro, we're bored right now. We're just going to set a cross on fire in their yard. Or we're going to put racial slurs on their garage door. Like, that never happens, bro. Like, like
Yeah.
it never happened. And
Yeah.
so there's something deep in their DNA that like makes them do this type of stuff. And if you cannot, if in my mind, if you cannot fathom that you have to live in these areas with all these people of colors and different traditions and cultures, then stay where you was at.
Mm.
Like you was over there in Europe. Y'all didn't want to bathe, so y'all had the plague. Like
Mm.
that was all fine and dandy. Y'all could stay over there and bathe once a year and keep throwing your waste out into the street like y'all was doing. But letting the Vikings run rampant, letting the Romans poke little boys, like whatever they was doing, y'all was over there doing that. That was fine. So if you didn't want to do that, then when you came over here, the Indians showed you how to fish and make corn and all that, and you should have just said, okay, cool, man. Like, where y'all want us at? We over here. All right, cool. Like the Native Americans signed treaties and agreed to give up land without bloodshed.
Yeah. Yeah. That was painful. It's like they were just pieces of paper, and then
Yeah.
they got through this. And it's crazy because, like, the natives didn't have lawyers like that. So if they
It was
signed
a
this
handshake.
paper, yeah, if they signed this paper, the whites could enforce it and say, hey, you signed this paper, so you said you weren't going to have any bloodshed, you weren't going to kill us, and we can't control our people, and then we got lawyers to get them out, and like, and that was real messed up to me. But I started to think a little bit about, like, because I watched it with Gabrielle, and as we were watching it, she was like looking at the voyages. She was like, wow, those were long ass voyages from country to country, and or from continent to continent. And so I started to think a little bit about that. Like, first of all, living in any time period before the 1900s, was just terrible for everybody. Like, you know, it's just terrible for everybody. No air condition, no running water, and no grocery stores. So, which I think are like, those are the three things that I love about 2021 for real. Like I don't want to go back to a time before any of those three things. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but then you think about being on a ship, not even the slaves. I mean, the slaves obviously terrible. That's for obvious reasons. But just being on a ship before 1900, from one continent to the next, like no running water. It's terrible on that ship. So you get here, you get to this country, and you're fucking starving. I don't know if you know, like, how many how much more likely you are to get into an argument with your wife when you're hungry, bro. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's not going to be a peaceful sight when you come home hungry, and
Mm-hmm.
there's just little things will piss you off. So I can only imagine what the mentality of these Europeans must have been like, coming off of these ships from their civilized place, which wasn't even much more civilized than it's like not at all civilized compared to now, but
They
they're
weren't even more civilized than us back then.
right.
Like when you get into how the Moors and all them fools literally taught them like, "Hey, bro, take a bath," uh, and
Mhm.
a lot of their
Brush
laws
your
and
teeth every day.
philosophies, yeah, a lot of their laws and philosophies came from us. You
Mhm.
know, again, these are the stories that like somebody like your uncle would be more familiar with because they've dived deeper into that. But it's like they didn't mind the boat trips because in there they tricked themselves into believing that this was their God-given like thing to do.
Mhm.
And when you're motivated by God, like, hey man, these couple months on the sea, like, this is what God wants us to do, bro. We here. So
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
didn't mind.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't it didn't suck. This was we're helping people.
Right. Right. Right.
You know? Those poor savages, they don't know. And it's kind of like they still do it today with missionary work.
Yeah.
You know, they be going over there to them countries, making them little kids pray, and them kids, yeah, you give me a pair of Yeezys, I pray to whatever you want to, like,
Mhm. Mhm.
like leaving people alone. you know, I
Yeah,
ain't
man.
going
Yeah,
on no
that
mission trip.
was interesting too. The idea that, like, when, like, all of this took place before science, like before modern science, and we understood, like, we could all agree, like, evolution and how we got here, and everything came from Africa. Like, it was it once Darwin came out, it was like, oh, okay, they make it's so funny because they used it, they spun the information to say, okay, so Darwin has proven that some of us are from apes, but so then that must mean that the black people are from apes, and we're from gods, we're from God himself, and that's what makes us white. And it's so interesting, um how that was the truth, that they saw it, they took that and ran with it.
Yeah, I
uh
mean, science was around, but like you said, they spun it. And this all goes back to gunpowder, bro. Like, honestly, like,
mhm.
if we were in a position to defend ourselves properly, this would be
And
a
the
whole
fact that
different
China
narrative.
didn't want to involve themselves um in the war, or like in the industry of in the gun industry, which is super interesting, because if China did get involved, it makes me think that, would the world have been communist? Like, would the world have looked more like China? Because without China being involved in gun manufacturing, it meant that there was a monopoly to be had on European gun manufacturing. It's like, okay, so now all these white people can make guns, and well, nobody else wants to involve themselves in guns, and and only China was on par technologically with the Europeans. And so just that fact alone, it's like, okay, now we can make a gun factory. Now we're producing guns, and now we can make money off of this, and people want it, and people see the power of this thing, and we have it, and we wield it, and we can go and test it on Africans. We can go test it in these other countries and see how it lives up, and we can write this story that we're gods and we're super powerful, and that we're ordained and manifest destiny. And then when the Africans see our power, then it proves the myth to be true. It makes it seem like this myth that we created is actually real. Like, oh my God, they're hidden, and they can kill us without us seeing them, and they can kill us without, just with a gun, and blow up our fucking bones and shit. Like, once they started inventing new ways of murder.
For sure.
But what's also interesting is the caveat to that, like where they missed it. So what I like to do when I think of history is I try to think of history as a god, and by doing that, I zoom out. Like, you got to zoom out and think much longer than a human lifespan, and when you do that, it shows that white people, or the European, they were not thinking ahead, because they got away with a lot of this stuff then. But now, bro, like, look, you and me we're two black guys. We're on this podcast. We talking about a docuseries that was made by a black dude, a major black filmmaker. And we're telling our stories. We have all these freedoms. We have all this power, and like, everything is black now. Everything wants to be black. They like black this. You see on every streaming platform, they got like a black section, and let's amplify black stories, and that is only because of what white people have done to us for the last, for since the beginning of time, basically, and what I see is a future where the global majority, which is people of color, rises up, and exactly what the Europeans didn't want to happen is what is happening. This is what they were trying to avoid, right? They were trying to avoid their own extinction. But guess what? Like, white isn't really gonna be a thing. It's like there's not gonna be no pure blood whites in
I mean, there
100 years.
There will be, because I mean, just how science and nature works, it's the playing field won't be so lopsided, because now we got guns too. Now we know how to vote too. Now we've learned the rules of your game, and we beat you at it. We're playing it, and we're beating you at it. And they try to change the game and change the rules every time, and they move the goalposts. And the thing they underestimate the most is that people of color, blacks, all of us, we're a lot more resilient than they intend, and
Yeah.
and that's ultimately, like, in the future, the playing field won't be so lopsided. We won't be as sitting ducks and fish in a barrel for them to shoot and have their way with, like they used to. Like, now, we could fight back in more ways than one, especially with the information age, which has always been a gift and a curse for us. But with the information age, with more docuseries like this, more if they continue to put out more things to where we can digest it and understand what's going on, even to someone who's even more casual at this than we are, because you're going to have to be able to reach the black people that necessarily don't want to watch documentaries. You know, you're going to have to be able to reach your uncle and them, and that spectrum. And as more and more of us are getting those light bulbs to pop off, like, yikes. You know, so
do you see an end to the race war, like a battle of race?
not in our lifetime.
No, not even with the rise of technology and, you know, in the information age and us, you know,
no, because they're designing technology to be racist. You know,
really, in what ways?
look into like how artificial intelligence has how it there's like a whole thing about how AI is basically algorithms are being programmed to be racist. I mean, look at your explore page on IG and you never see dark skinned models. Like, it's not a thing. You know, the algorithm doesn't feel like those pages perform well, or that's not what people see. So they adjust and show you to lighter, fair skinned, curly haired women. That's why all the influencers that we see look the exact same, because the algorithm says this is what is the standard of beauty. And they're out there, you know, like, and this is artificial intelligence made by who? Them. So, you know, so you can, something as simple as like when you're waving your hand under a water fountain. I think there was like some college that just did a study about how the sensors in the bathrooms are less prone to work when a black hand is waved in front of it. You know, so like technology is only going to allow them to be more sneaky with the shenanigans. But again, we'll learn that. And the thing, what we need to do, or what we are starting to do, is we starting to be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive. We're always waiting for them to change the game. Then we got to figure it out. Then we play it. And it's like, we're always like one step behind, you know, and like like we need to be able to like get ahead of that somehow. I don't have the answers or solutions, but I feel like we're going to get there. And I just recently, even too, just with the how they're repealing and reforming marijuana laws, you know, how black gun ownership has skyrocketed within the last year, legal black gun ownership, stuff like that. When we're getting informed, so we're not so reactionary to it, that's going to be a game changer.
Word, man. Any final thoughts as we start to close out this?
To those that continue to listen, I would encourage you to watch the documentary, but also continue to watch it, or watch it with an open mind and not on some like, yo, whites gotta pay. Not all whites are evil. So we still need allies. And it's a situation to where if you're running into someone, black, white, brown, or purple, it's not a time to be condescending to them if they want to be more informed about what's going on. That's a big thing that happens, especially on IG, where there's people who are ignorant, not because of on some like maliciousness, it's just they just don't know. And then when they want to help or they want more information, it's like, I'm not doing your job. You need to go Google. What you mean you don't know this? Like, what you mean? Like, you not real black? And it's just like, bro, that fool grew up in Hebron, Texas, bro. Like, he was 3 or 4 black people in his school. He don't know Fred Hampton, you know?
Right.
Like, and the energy, again, the energy you do bickering back and forth, you could put him on game. You could put her on. You could put the white girl who braids her hair or dreads her hair on game of why that is considered offensive. You could put people dressing up as Mexicans or Native Americans on Thanksgiving and wearing headdresses and, sacred ceremonial headdresses for photo shoots. You could put them on game of why it's offensive than being so easy to cancel.
Right.
Like, you should save canceling for people who know better.
Right.
And choose not to do better. So you can do that by educating yourself, and then using an opportunity to teach rather than to destroy. Not everything is meant to be destroyed, and that's not how you further the movement. Is if anytime somebody wants to join in on, because we need allies. Like, we can't do it alone. Never have done it alone. You can't, especially in this country. So you're going to need people willing that are eager and willing to learn. You're going to have to be in a position to teach them. Secondly, I would convince or strongly encourage everyone to get familiar with their Second Amendment and arm themselves legally. I'm a firm practicer of the Second Amendment myself, and it doesn't hurt to at least know the law and your rights as an American citizen, because as someone who has recently got into the legal gun ownership, I'm going to tell you, bullets have been selling out faster than Jordans every week.
Wow.
Like when I first got mine, a box of 50 bullets was $9. Now they're $45 a box.
Whoa.
And that's on the cheap end. And every day, the quote unquote enemy, they're armed, bro. And that's not something to be necessarily saying to scare people, but this is what happened last time. Was they were significantly well more prepared for something to pop off. And if anything, I feel like you're less likely, you're going to be a target regardless. But if you could fight back, you stand a chance, man.
Yeah.
And that, do you got to be out here like Yosemite Sam? No. But should you be able to protect your household or your person? Yeah. Does that mean every time you want to run or jog the neighborhood, you need to have it on you? That's up to you to decide. It's not up to me. Right. But like, it's in the Constitution that we are granted those same rights. And they've tricked us into believing that we don't need to arm ourselves. They've tricked us to believing that like only rednecks are paranoid people, or, God's going to protect you, or whatever the rhetoric is. They've tricked you into believing that you don't need that. But if that's the case, right now, there's people literally sleeping that will spend the night outside of Academy at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning just to make sure on the nights the bullets get shipped in to buy them off the shelf.
Wow.
Like there's things where you can literally buy pieces of a gun online to create a gun in your own home without a serial number that they're doing. Like, and so you're wondering where these mass shootings are happening and all this type of stuff. And it's like, y'all worried about the wrong thing. Arm yourself, bro. And you don't have to, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to at least look into it and know your rights there. I think that's about it. I was pretty much rambling, but I don't know. As a new black gun owner, I strongly encourage everyone to at least take a look into what's going on.
Shit, Donovan, thank you so much for joining.
Word.
You could find him at 88 Killer on all social media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Exterminate All the Brutes is on HBO Max. We highly encourage that you watch it. Please watch it. It's important for everybody to know our history. This is not just Black history. This is world history. This is life history. And we benefit from having as much information as possible. So
yeah.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's been real. Thanks for joining us on The Devil's Advocate, making the best cases for the guiltiest pleasure. Peace out, y'all.